do the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Public audience. Is there any public on this apparatus? None.
No, there was none received by way of email.
Okay. So the two topics on the agenda are the candidate recommendation for the first one. I can't talk. How do I turn this off? For James Anino, and would you like to give us some information on James,
sure.
Chief?
Yep. Mr. Anino has been a paraprofessional with the Cromwell Board of Education for the last 18 years and a volunteer firefighter EMT in that same town. He's obtained over 100 college credits through the Connecticut college system, and he's worked with school-aged children and emergency services and has provided them with a wealth of education. He came highly recommended for his ability to handle emergencies and de-escalation. Very good candidate for the position. He has gone through the entire background process. Today, he will be completing the drug screening and medical portion, and then that's it for the background. It's been completed at that point.
Did any of the commissioners have any comments?
Chief, this is Terry Fogarty. You said he's going to complete the medical and the screening today?
Yes, Terry, I'm not sure exactly what time he was scheduled for his medical, but it is today, the screening and the physical today. And so that will complete his requirements and complete the conditional offer. And, unless there are any concerns that come up during that would prohibit him from becoming a dispatcher, I would be looking for the approval for the appointment of him.
And when would the training start?
So we are assuming that there's going to be at least a 2-week notice, so we haven't figured out the exact start time, but we will be able to start the training fairly soon. It would just be a sort of out of the ordinary start to the training, based on all of our precautions with the COVID-19.
I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Any further questions?
I do not have any.
Okay. I'd like to have someone move that we offer employment to James Anino.
I move that we
Terry.
offer. Terry.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Jenna.
I move that we offer employment to James Anino as a public safety dispatcher.
Okay.
And Terry Fogarty seconds that.
Thank you very much. The second candidate is Kimberly Rathbun.
Yes, so, so thank you. So Kimberly has spent a lot of her life in the healthcare profession and most recently in emergency services for the last 4 years. She has also been a part-time commission clerk for both the town of Simsbury, which she is currently doing, as well as East Granby. She's been an EMT for the Windsor Locks Lions Club ambulance for the last 4 years, and she's just looking for a change in direction, but staying within the services field. She has studied health sciences and social work. She has, like I said, a lot of experience. She worked in hospitals and other healthcare settings. A great deal of experience with handling emergencies, and her and James both being highly trained in the medical field, I think would be a very good benefit to our dispatch, our communications center.
Are there any questions for the chief on Kimberly?
Is she on the same path for completing the medical and the other screening, Chief?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, both were scheduled for today. Kimberly as well has had her background completely finished except for the drug screening and the medical today, and the same exact conditions are there that as soon as she completes those and we receive word, and there is not anything that would prohibit her from doing that position, then my recommendation would be the appointment of her as soon as we can get her joined.
Super, thank you.
Any further questions?
I do not have any questions.
Okay, I entertain a motion to offer employment to Kim Rathbun.
Jenna Caulfield seconds that motion.
Okay. All right, so Terry, you made the motion?
I made the motion.
Thank you. Okay, so it's Terry and Jenna. Thank you very much for your help.
Thank you.
My poor hearing doesn't add to this process very well. The second item on the agenda is the amended declaration for local state of emergency for the town of Simsbury, revised on April 17th of 2020. Are there any comments by any of the commissioners?
This is Terry. I don't have any further comments on the proclamation and the attorney's letter to Maria, the town manager.
I am here if you have any questions, commissioners.
Okay.
I'll say one thing, it's Jim Fleming. I disagree with the process that was used to get here, but other than that, I have no comment.
Okay. It's my understanding that the chief, due to some questions raised by the Chiefs Police Association and others, approached the town manager about softening some of the governor's remarks or orders as far as the police pulling people over or arresting people for not wearing a mask. This was, the town manager, I understand, brought it to the attention of the town attorney, who amended the original proclamation to add number 7. And subsequent to that, I received an email from the chief with the change to the directive to add this directive, and asked, because I felt that the police commission should have been involved in this process before it was approved, that he hold off on it until we had a chance to discuss it. I've spoken to the chief. I don't know if you have any comments as far as your interpretation of this.
As
you'd like to.
Sure. Yeah. As far as the actual amendment in there, I see it as a very good option for us, because the original concern was that if there were violations of the governor's orders, and if it raised to the level that we had to actually perform some sort of enforcement besides educating and alternatives to other things, we would not have to jump. We did not want to jump up to a misdemeanor or a summons to court or a felony, which is what the attorneys were saying was really the only applicable state statute. So this provided us with an opportunity that if we went beyond that point of education or an alternative to an arrest or alternative to actual enforcement. We went beyond warning. We had a tool that was not as severe as a summons to court or a felony arrest. You know, understanding that these times are extremely difficult for everybody, and what maybe seem very difficult for you or I, maybe 10 times more difficult for the next person. We don't know what motivations may come from people who do not want to comply with orders. We don't know, but we want to be able to have a tool to be able to sort of progressively move forward if we need to be, or if we need to. And my understanding was that the existing town ordinance process would allow that with this simple revision to the declaration from the town.
I have a comment here on an email I received from Mike Long, who wasn't able to join us today. And he says, I generally believe it is appropriate for the executive and legislative to make laws in our community or for the police department to enforce those laws. I also believe, absent an overriding need for speed to make these laws, that the police commission on behalf of the SPD should be informed and consulted during the process, and that if a new law is to be promulgated within the community, it will be best done affirmatively showing that all three bodies are in agreement and have signed off on it. I agree with this, and I think what concerns some of us is that we were not consulted during the formation of this process, and I believe we should. Any other commissioners have any comments?
This is Jim Fleming. I have two questions for the chief. Chief, is this limited to face masks or for any of the restrictions that are part of the governor's numerous executive orders? For example, you're not supposed to have more than a certain number of people at a funeral. If I have seen funerals up at Center Cemetery that exceeded those numbers, would the police take any kind of action if that was reported to them or if they saw it?
So just like almost any other type of call that we may get, we are going to go and we're going to respond and we're going to assess. You know, our general philosophy, and which has been this way for many, many years, is to look for the best resolution. And in most cases, that doesn't involve any type of enforcement activity. So with any of these executive orders, they range from what may seem really simple as not wearing a mask in a grocery store to the number of people at a funeral service. We're going to look at what are the options. You know, first we're going to be looking for willful compliance. If we're talking about, you know, maybe a bar being open and serving people, you know, we have another avenue there with the Liquor Commission. So we're going to be looking for other either licensing agencies, regulators to help with that compliance. So the answer to your question is yes, if somebody calls about that, yes, we will be responding, and we would be handling that as diplomatically and as appropriately as we possibly could. We would not be looking to...
In that instance, when you say you'll get the Liquor Commission involved, you realize, I know you realize that they can only take action against a license, not against individual persons. So in order, okay. So
if a bar was open, go ahead, sir.
Your answer is yes. It is not just limited to masks, but any of the items that occur in terms of enforcement as a result of the governor's executive orders, correct?
My understanding is yes, that any of those could apply. Yep.
Yeah, this is Bob DiCrescenzo. That is correct, Jim.
Yeah. Well,
And go ahead, Jim.
Jenna, just to follow up. Now, the at least the original town ordinance that I read, and it might have been part of the governor's, it did raise the issue of a felony. And I believe that risk, it's unavoidable, but it is still out there. And my one concern is that the felony would occur as it would with anybody who is confronted by the police when there's an issue, is that they could, in fact, get themselves in trouble by how they reacted to the police. And so it could still result in a felony. Is that right, Chief?
Well, technically, yes. Technically, if all those pieces fell together and they were all lawful, then technically, yes. You know, I think we have, for decades now, worked on, you know, the police department's philosophy and what's acceptable. And, you know, the charging of a felony is really reserved for the most serious of crimes. And I'll give you an example. If somebody is not in compliance with the governor's order and they're causing a problem at, say, a grocery store, there are many options. There are many options outside of the governor's orders of a simple trespass, as a breach. And we always want to start off at the lowest possible thing that will do what the intention is, to change the behavior, to make people safe, whatever that may be. And so I don't imagine this town jumping to a felony for anything, but technically, yes, that is possible.
But that
All right, then.
felony language, it comes out of the statute, not the declaration. The declaration.
I understand that. That's not my question. So, given, Chief, again to you, not to the town attorney, because you're the one that's going to have to be in front of the public on this issue. Do you think that there is any merit, because people have been cooped up for so long? Some people find the virus to be less serious than it is. There's a lot of potential right now for somebody to have a bad reaction to this. And so I think there would be merit to the department trying to develop some kind of a guidelines very specific to this order, to give our police officers some guidance as to what they can do, or maybe some additional training to try to avoid those types of confrontations. Because at this point, I think there's a high risk that somebody is going to get their nose out of joint about this, and we're going to end up having to have them charged with a felony. Do you think if there's any need for us to develop some kind, or you to develop some guidelines on this?
Well, there already has been for the last couple of weeks, as far as handling these in general before this revision even came out. And, you know, with this in place and moving forward with further guidelines, I think that would be the next step. That's what would be appropriate, to address this as a tool and reinforce everything. As far as a document or guideline that is specific as a step-by-step, in this profession, that, as you know, that's extremely difficult to do, and circumstances vary. We can continue to stress the overall intention and goal of having this as an option, as well as the others, and how we should handle it.
Is this, Chief, something that you're going to approach the sergeants about before we start enforcing this? Giving them some guidance on what your ideas of what you should do?
So as soon as this issue is cleared, we will put something out department-wide. And like I said, we have already several different times as far as what the expectations are prior to this even coming out. So there will be, you know, further explanation or guidance based on this, yes.
Attorney DiCrescenzo,
Yes.
The idea raised, or this topic raised by Mike Long about that the police commission should have been informed prior to this declaration being promulgated. Do you have an opinion on that?
Well,
Should
I mean,
we
it's
have-
always, in my view, it's always a good idea to proactively inform the commission of anything that could possibly fall within its jurisdiction. This one was a little bit unusual set of circumstances, but, you know, I think, let let me say it this way. Through this process, we're learning a lot about a lot of things, including the emergency declarations. And, these orders from the governor are coming out, in some cases, 2 a day. And we're trying to respond and react to them as quickly as we can to give guidance to various town departments, not just the police department. But one thing I think we've probably learned from this is, the balance, the need to get something done quickly with the need to inform all the stakeholders of the pendency of it. And, it's a learning experience. And I would agree that if future orders or changes come up to this declaration, then, on the CC list of the draft should be the chairman of the police commission.
Okay.
To allow input before the fact. I mean, you have it now, and you put a hold on enforcement, and what you're doing at this meeting, I think, is what the commission should do, because that's part and parcel of the commission's role.
I share the concerns of my fellow commissioners that with the fluid nature of these executive orders coming out and the shift of the policy and enforcement, I do think the commission needs to be informed, because these are currently, like you said, every 2 days, or 2 times a day, we're getting new executive orders. And how are they going to be enforced is something that the commission should be kept aware of.
Well, I'll give you an example. One came out this morning on wearing face masks in the workplace, and Chief and I have already been, going over that and what does it mean for dispatch. And, Chief, we should probably forward on that communication to the commission and let them know what that's all about. I'm not sure, it's a lot of it is interpretive. I mean, this is a DECD guideline for under what circumstances people have to wear face masks in the workplace. And immediately you think about dispatch. Now, Chief and I already talked about it a couple of days ago, anticipating this would come along. And the way your dispatch center is set up, I think you're in good shape. And also you will many times only have one dispatcher. But that's an example. The thing came out this morning. Everyone is interested in complying and implementing as soon as possible. We had a discussion about it. And I can't see a downside to letting the commission into that process. Not that you necessarily have it, you're going to say do this and do that, just so you're aware of how quickly these things come along, and in some cases how complicated they are. This enforcement one, the issue of enforcement, town attorneys across the state have been discussing this since mid-March, because it's an open question. It was an open question, and there was a need to answer the question. So yes, Ned, I think that what we've learned is early communication with the commission benefits everybody.
Agreed. To get to the essence of the declaration, does anyone have any arguments with that? Any problems with it? What was proclaimed?
This is Terry, no issue.
Okay. Jenna?
No, I don't have issue. I think it's good that the police department has options to try to enforce these in ways that are various options. I think it's important.
Okay. Jim?
Never had a problem with the ordinance itself. So
I'll mention something that happened with another police department, not to be named, but sometimes when they get complaints like this that aren't life-threatening, they tell the complainant that they'll be there as soon as they stop crime. In other words, some of these things are not the end-all and be-all as far as the rules go. And I think if we're more judicious in enforcing them, we might be better off in the long run. So based on the comments, I'll say we're all in favor of this, and we can add our
Mr. Chairman, I would move I would move that we adopt it by unanimous consent.
I second,
All in
Jenna
favor?
Schofield seconds that motion.
Okay, I'm in favor of it. Jim, you're in favor of it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All in favor? We
Aye.
will
Aye.
accept that. All right. Being no other business before the police commission on the special agenda, I'll entertain a movement for adjournment. Anyone?
Terry moves for adjournment.
Jenna seconds.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you doing this, folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very
Have
well.
a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.